brings home the tropics.
Viewers around the world, peace on earth from CNN.
From Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, Fred Barnes. Tonight, what's new for 92? In the Crossfire, Tim Willard, Executive Officer of the World Future Society, and Marvin Cetron, President of Forecasting International.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire, and welcome to 1992. It's an election year in the United States. It's the first year of the post-communist era in what used to be the Soviet Union. Americans begin it feeling more economically insecure than at any time in the past 2 decades. What does the future hold? We could sit here and idly speculate, as we usually do, but this evening we've decided to be scientific about it. We have with us 2 futurologists, experts on the study of the future. These gentlemen know exactly what's going to happen in 1992 and beyond, on subjects ranging from politics and economics to computers and AIDS. And now they're going to tell us. But first, let me venture a prediction of my own. Even the experts will sometimes disagree. Fred?
Marvin Cetron, Mike's a gloomy Gus about the economy, but don't you think the American economy will rebound sharply in 1992?
I really do. I think that most of the indicators show it will. Not only is first of all, the interest rates are down. We have better sales right now going on our heavy industries being made up. Our inflation rate is almost nil. But more important than this, we're not in a recession per se. Yes, we're out of work. Recession's bottomed out. We're in a restructuring. A lot of the people who lost their jobs in manufacturing will not get them back. And that's part of the problem. I think the old man's doing a fairly decent job on setting up roads, bridges, and things, but that's going to take some time. I think we ought to be also cutting back some of the this peace dividend.
Wait, who's this old man? I didn't follow
the president.
That.
I think the president's doing a good job.
George Bush.
That man.
Hey, before Tim Willard jumps in, let me throw in one other question, though, and that is, well, okay, the economy rebounds sharply, but when does the nation's psyche rebound? Because the people are like Mike. You know, they're much gloomier about the economy than the economy really justifies.
I agree. The problem with that is that the media is helping keeping it the way it is.
That's
honestly.
Mike.
That's blame it all on me.
That's a conspiracy theory. I hate conspiracy theories. I think that if you talk about an across-the-board anything, a recovery, or even heading more into a recession, you're missing the point, that we now live in a society. We talk about what's called a Swiss cheese economy, where you have areas of great strength with great big holes in it. Go to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and ask people whether they're in a recession now. They'll say, we've been in a depression for 10 years. Go out to Silicon Valley and ask certain companies how the recession's doing, and they're going to say, what recession? I think that's the case that we're going to see all through the 1990s.
But overall, the economy will be
I think we're talking flat, really. I think that the day and age of an overall economic upturn or downturn is probably behind us.
All right, there's no simple solutions, but let me give you one thing, and this is honest. You can see we're coming out of the South first, the Southwest second. You're coming out of Washington State, then Oregon, then the Farm Belt, then California, then the Rust Bucket, and finally the Northeast. And the reason, the higher the degree of unionization, the later it comes out of a recession. Companies are afraid to start up a new business in a place where it's highly unionized.
Let's get specific now, and let's get some information that people can use. Where will the Dow Jones Industrial Average be in a year?
But you were saying 3,200 points?
I think
That's flat.
32.
That's flat. I mean, basically, we're almost at 3,100 right now.
Okay.
How can you say that that's a rebounding economy?
I think what happens is we're leading out with the first of all, the stock market. The stock market's the best indicator of what's going on. We have some going up, some going down indicators. But the longest one is it's going up, it's not going down, and there'll be more jobs coming out as well.
Well, what does this mean? 3,200 doesn't sound like that strong an economy. What does this mean for George Bush? Is he going to get reelected or not?
I think he'll carry 40 to 45 states because they're going to put a liberal in. When it gets down south, 17 states on Super Tuesday, we'll vote Republican. But it won't be one of the Dukes or Pat Buchanan's, I can tell you that. Even if Pat had plastic surgery, he's not going to make it. The business with America First is going to put America last. 39% of all of our goods are from different...
Well, Tim, what about George Bush?
I don't think that people are going to vote labels at all. They're going to vote domestic issues and particularly pocketbook issues. Look at what happens in the second and third quarter economically next year. I don't think that people are going to say, I'm voting for a Republican, I'm voting for a conservative, I'm voting for a liberal. They're going to
Yeah,
vote.
they have to vote for somebody. Who's it going to be?
They're going to vote for whoever they think is going to do something to stimulate the economy. But keep in mind, it's not the economy, it's their sector of the economy. Whatever looks good to that individual, that's the person they're
Well,
going
if
to
you
vote for.
had to predict right now, and you do, whether George Bush is going to win or not,
I'd say go with the power of the incumbency. I think that's basically...
There's a good reason for this, too. We as Democrats raised our kids to be Republicans. We sent them to the business school, bottom line, and they voted Republican.
Although I don't think it's because it's a Republican. I think that George Bush is probably mostly a lock because he's an incumbent, and that's far more important this year than
Tim,
either party.
let's talk about politics across the water. And you can start on this one. Will Boris Yeltsin still be in command a year from now?
I think so. I don't think that things are going to be quite as tumultuous next year as they have been in the past year. But beyond that, it's anybody's guess. And really, what the shape of the Confederation is going to depend a lot on what happens economically and food-wise in the Soviet Union.
That's my next question. Decontrol of prices, in the Russia at least, unclear about the other republics, starts January 2nd. Some of them are going to triple. Is there going to be utter economic chaos in the Soviet Union, or whatever it's called? Or are they going to get through into something new? A year from now, will it be looking good? Will they have been over the worst? Or will it still be bad?
They're in transition like we are in this country, going to the business to a service economy. But it's going to be worse for them because they think because they can play monopoly, they understand capitalism, they understand entrepreneurship. And the truth is, all they know is when you go around the board, every time you pass go, you get 200 rubles. That ain't the game. The game is played with a banker. The banker, when you play monopoly, happens to be the West. In this case, we wrote a year and a half ago in Crystal Globe, the have and have-nots, the New World Order. And you remember we sent the article to you. We said we don't expect Gorbachev to be in, and we don't expect Yeltsin to be in. We expect Shevardnadze to be in. He's going to have uplinks and downlinks to all the universities.
You said this a year and a half ago, or you're saying this now?
No, we said that a year and a half ago.
You're still
that
saying
prior to 1995, you'll have neither of them in charge. And there will be a loose confederation.
But you are saying now that Shevardnadze will be in control of the Soviet Union?
By 1995, yes.
That's going to be a little difficult since he's from Georgia, and Russia is not likely to put a Georgian
That's one
as
of
the head
reasons
of their country.
but the other 11 republics will want someone other than Russia being in charge.
One thing we had in...
Let's let Tim...
I would say,
go ahead,
I would say that other people, other futurists studying the Soviet Union would say there's at least as good a chance of somebody we've never heard of being in as Shevardnadze.
Well, what will the economy there look like a year from now? Will it be... Will people be starving in the streets? Will they be, as Poland was after a year or two, sort of through the worst? Or
I don't think that you're going to be through the worst in 1992 because the worst hasn't even really begun. When you talk about taking off price controls, a free market, you've got to have something to be on the market with. There are economists who say, one of the problems is not the price of things on the shelves, it's that there's nothing on the shelves.
One of the things that happened in 1991 that surprised even Mike was that we have more than a dozen new countries on the map. Now, will we get some new countries in 1992, say a Palestine or a Croatia or a Slovenia or perhaps a Czechoslovakia will break into two countries?
We have the Slovenia and Croatia in one country because they're Christian. You have Herzegovina, Bosnia, etc. in the center because they're Muslim. And you'll have the Serbia and the other groups that are with them
all
because
independent
they're
countries.
Independent, a loose confederation, same as we'll have in Russia.
What about on this continent? Because I understand, I predict that both of you have interesting views on that. Will there be any new nations on the North American continent?
Likely to see Quebec secede from Canada by 1995.
And what's your basis for that?
Basically, I'm going to go with what Marvin is writing about this, the breakdown of the Meese Lake Accords, which would have granted a limited degree of autonomy to French-speaking citizens, but also the fact that really, in most cases where you have the haves and have-nots, the haves feel that they're supporting the have-nots. In this case, the have-not provinces, the poorer provinces in the Atlantic and Pacific, don't really want to stay in the Union either.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, we wrote that up also, as you probably know, 3 years ago. That's why we had 55 stars on the flag in 2000, American Renaissance.
Well,
four of those were Canada. The maritime provinces,
so in other words,
four states of the United States. Canada would become 4 states. The maritime province is 1 state, Ontario a 2nd state. If you take a look then at the western provinces I'm talking about.
2 more states. We accept that. What's the
2 states, and because they're Republican, because they're resource rich.
What's the fifth one?
The fifth one's going to be Puerto Rico, and that'll be all before 2000. Quebec will be separate for obvious reasons. But they've got more in common, you see, the western provinces with Washington State and Oregon and Alaska and the rest than they have with their own
I wish Pat were here. He'd be very excited by that.
Oh,
He knew that
all
too.
right, well, thank you,
Although I
Fred.
have to throw in here with that,
Very briefly.
obviously some of the people of Canada, we asked, do they want to become part of the United States? We have to ask how much America wants to take on the Canadian provinces, particularly poorer provinces that have gotten used to a very high level of services.
All right, well, we're not going to ask that tonight, I'm sorry. We have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get closer to home. What new gadgets will be in your life in 1992 and beyond?
Remember when cats sang for Meow Mix?
Meow, 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 meow.
Well, now there's an all-new Meow Mix. With flavors cats prefer 3 to 1. If cats sang for the old Meow Mix, what'll they do now? All new Meow Mix. Tastes so good, cats ask for it by name,
Meow.
to say the least.
We have so much to celebrate. Corbel Champagne.
You, my friend, can use some fun. Big fun. Las Vegas, Atlantic City, cruise ships. But you gotta take this along, the Players Club card. It's gonna save you a lot of money. 25 to 50% off fabulous resort hotels, 25% off meals and drinks, up to 50% off shows and entertainment. Come on. Call Players Club for much more information free. You're too smart to pay full price.
New members get 2 free nights in Las Vegas or Atlantic City when the club books their flights. Call toll-free now.
From the cover of Playboy, she turned Washington upside down. Model Tay Collins reveals the steamy details of her alleged affair with United States Senator Charles Robb. Tonight, Larry King Live, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Welcome back to Crossfire. To start off the year on a forward-looking note, we're talking about the future. All of it, but especially the part that comes in the next 12 months. Our guests are 2 futurologists. Tim Willard is executive officer of the World Future Society, a nonprofit independent organization located here in Washington. Marvin Cetron is president of Forecasting International, also here in Washington, a think tank that works for corporations and government agencies. He's also author of a book called Crystal Globe. Let me start with Tim on this one. The fax machine came out of nowhere a few years ago. Maybe you futurologists knew about it. We certainly didn't. Suddenly it was everywhere. What is the next big gadget that will become universal?
Well, I think the thing that we're most interested in looking at is robotics in the home. Basically, we're not talking about a little garbage can with light bulbs for eyes, but things such as robotic vacuum cleaners that could clean automatically in the house, robotic dishwashers that could load and unload themselves, voice-activated microwave ovens. In other words, appliances that will do things that it takes people to do now. The question is going to be whether people see them as a necessary component of their life, like the microwave oven in terms of saving time, or whether they're just going to see them as an expensive gadget.
What's your prediction?
My prediction is if they'll save time, people will want them. They'll not only say, I want them, but I need them.
Marvin's rolling his eyes.
I don't believe so. I think robotics is extremely important in factories for automation, computer-aided design, manufacturing, as we said earlier. We'll have those after the year 2000, but I think the newest things coming up will be machines that'll have your facsimile, your duplicating, your telephone, your computer in one machine, very inexpensive, with beepers. You can carry it with you wherever you're at. You can get information and data you need wherever you're going to be at. And they have it set up in such a manner we'll be able to use it for business. That's why by the year 2000, 22% of our people will be working at home.
Yeah, but don't underplay the importance of robotics.
No, I don't. I'm saying I think it's going to be important in business. We got to get to the price where the cost comes down.
In the year 2000, will there be robots replacing futurologists on shows like this?
We have computers doing it right now.
Yep.
Our computer data bank has 35,000 events in it, 200 trends. We bet 95%. So yeah, the answer is we use computers in our generating our information. Without that, you can't do the work well.
you know, we skipped over the Middle East before. What I'd like to know, what's going to happen to Saddam Hussein? He stayed in power just barely. Will he last through 1992 in Iraq?
I can handle that. I don't.
Go ahead, Marvin.
1992 he may make, but that's about the extent of it. He'll not die in his sleep, let me tell you. There are enough people who like to get rid of him, and I think that's the problem. The Middle East problem really in 1992, and the one who would be elected president in a minute if it works out would be Baker. And the answer is we can get the Middle East settlement set up whereby land for peace is given. Well, not Jerusalem, but...
Will we in 92?
I think you got a chance of having something over the next... By the end of 1992, there's a good possibility they may give the West Bank, part of the Gaza Strip, and part of the East Bank, because Jordan took the wrong side also. You have 300,000 Palestinians coming back from Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Jerusalem will be kept by itself, and I think the output of that will be that you're going to have those countries being...
Speaking of... Wait a minute, I want to try one more thing sort of about the Middle East, and that is about terrorists getting nuclear weapons. Will some of the Middle East terrorists get them, Tim?
It's unlikely. I think they're too tightly held, and really, we overplay how easy it is to obtain nuclear materials and to put them together. I think that it's not a likely scenario.
You're in agreement there, then we're
The answer I think Tim was probably going to bring out is you got a bigger problem with biological and chemical, not nuclear. NBC warfare, nuclear is dead. The world has now been made safe for small, regional, religious conflict.
All right, well, that brings me to my question. 2 years ago, if someone had said on this date that within a year the United States was going to be in a war with Iraq, everyone would have said, Iraq, where's that?
Except, okay, we have
where's the next war?
1982, we expect Iran to attack Iraq.
Everyone except the futurologist.
Okay, fine.
Everyone except the futurologist. So here you are. Where is the next war? Not necessarily with the United States. Is there going to be some war somewhere in 92, and where's it going to be?
Well, obviously in the Soviet Union, intra-regional struggles and so forth. I mean, this is going on right now. Whether it's going to be one nation to the other, doesn't really matter, but there's already fighting going on in several of the provinces there. I don't think there's any question about that. It's going to continue.
Marvin's got
there's four different places. They're all religious also. Between Northern Ireland, actually between the Protestants and Catholics, that Northern Ireland business is going to continue. It's religious. The business in Greece and Turkey has a potential problem also because it's Greek Orthodox and Muslims. The problems in the Middle East, unless we get a settlement there, you got another between Jews again and Arabs, and the other one is the people in Croatia and Slovenia against the people and the Muslims that are over there in the Serbs. You've got a problem in each one, and they're all religiously based.
Well, let me go back to some of these gadget and things. You know, one of the things that I think people worry about is something is getting to work every day. Is there anything on the horizon in 92 that will help people get to work faster?
Sure. It's called working at home. You get home in your own office.
That's not what I had in mind, but
that's true. You get rid of all your traffic on the road. 22% of our people will be working at home. 44% will be dealing with information, collecting it, analyzing it, synthesizing it, storing it, and retrieving it, which means the cities of over 2 million are pretty much dead.
Unexpectedly, in 1991, relations between men and women became a national issue because of Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas and because of William Kennedy Smith's trial. Where is that trend going to go in 92?
Well, I think that kind of examining ethical issues is going to be a bigger and bigger trend, whether it's between men and women, whether it's in terms of our medical ethics or questions about invasion of privacy and so forth. This is obviously a decade during which we're going to be taking a look at a lot of things that just didn't seem like issues that we had to thrash out in public. But obviously, it's going to be a nation of not only, you know, what's happening technologically or what's happening in public events, but what the ethical implications are.
Mike. And I'll tell you what it is. Not only is good. It's good because people are now aware of sexual harassment, what it means, but bad because women will not go in professionals with their male counterparts. They'll be afraid, and they won't be called in and close the door to talk about something because they're going to be afraid of rape charges, and therefore they're going to be fewer promotions.
Marvin, I'm going to have to close the door on you right now. When we come back, we'll discuss the subject of who's headed for stardom and who's headed for oblivion in 1992 and ask this weighty question. Will Mike Kinsley be replaced by a robot this year?
Hello, I'm Susan Rook. At the top of the hour, a look ahead at huge price hikes going into effect in Russia, limiting Japanese car imports. How would your life change? And one man's trash is another treasure as CNN's Larry Woods travels across America. Prime News is right after Crossfire.
They don't live in the rainforest. They don't swim in the ocean or soar in the sky. Where they live, hope is the endangered species, as precious as any animal, plant, or habitat on Earth, because every day these children wake up in a toxic environment of poverty. Here, a sick baby will probably die for lack of a simple remedy made from water, sugar, and salt. Here, a little girl will never achieve her one dream, learning how to read. And right here in the United States, a frightened preschooler is locked alone in his apartment because his parents can't afford daycare. All over the world, millions of precious children are hungry, hurting, afraid. But for many of them, there is hope through the work of Save the Children and the generosity of people like you. Save the Children fights the poverty and hunger that destroy children's lives. They know how to make the suffering stop, but they need you to help. It's simple to do. Just pick up the phone and say you'll be a Save the Children sponsor. We'll rush you the name and story of a little child who urgently needs you. A photograph will follow, and from then on, you'll receive regular word of how your sponsored child is benefiting from the good work your $20 monthly contribution helps make possible. Save the Children knows how to get the most out of every penny. In fact, your contribution, combined with others, helps provide programs that enable communities to nurture all their children. Call and say you'll join us. And one by one, we can quell the hunger, heal the sickness, and help give little children the chance to live and be children. Become a Save the Children sponsor. Call 1-800-882-8600.
Tim, surprise me with someone you think is headed for stardom in 1992.
I think it's probably going to be a medical technologist whose name we don't know, who's going to make a big breakthrough, and it's likely going to be in the area of AIDS. It's certainly been forecasted that this is going to be a year in which we're going to see some significant breakthroughs, not in terms of a vaccine or a cure, but in a life extension technology that is really going to mean people are going to be able to live a lot longer with AIDS.
Well, that's great news. Marvin, what about someone headed for oblivion in 1992?
I think it's probably going to be someone like David Duke.
But not Mike Kinsley.
No, I think we're talking Dave Duke.
All right, look, a problem that's been around for just about exactly 10 years that sort of came out of nowhere also is the homelessness. 10 years ago, you never saw the homeless on the streets in major cities. Now you see them everywhere.
You saw them, but only in special areas.
Is that a problem that is going to go away in the next few years, or is there any development on the horizon there?
I don't think it's going to go away, primarily because it's never gone away. And I think that while there may be an increase in number, it's really an increase in awareness. It's really going to be a question of what, in the next few years, we're going to do with a continuing problem. This isn't a problem that came out of nowhere. It's a problem that's been around.
It's single-head of household. It's a problem that society's got to bear some of the responsibility for. And I think that a lot of our people are sailing, have been close to the edge. We're living high on the hog in the 80s, and now it's going to get a little tough in the 90s, and that may make a problem.
Speaking of families, some people have predicted that we're going to be returning to the more Leave It to Beaver 1950s model of family in the future. Do you agree with that?
No, I think we're having more marriages, fewer divorces, but that's not a Leave It to Beaver family. It's not a Rockwell family. We have those because of herpes and AIDS, or the kids in college call it germs of endearment. But believe me, it's not an endearment. This is a problem, and I'm agreeing with Tim in this. The biggest problem is AIDS we have a problem with there.
We're not going to see a typical American family. 9% of American families now are the typical American family. From now on, it's going to be a nation of different, disparate types.
Well, we've left out some of the important questions, like will Madonna get married in 1992?
I don't think Pat Buchanan's available.
You're right about that. Will there be some new event like the Willie Smith trial, or as Mike mentioned, the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas thing that will rivet America to its televisions and to CNN in 92?
Absolutely, because if it doesn't exist, we will invent it. People want to be riveted by events, and we will find that which interests us. Something is going to come along. Whether it seems like it would be interesting or not, today we will manufacture it if it doesn't exist.
I think one of the big ones will be that we'll probably next year have the Redskins win a second time in a Super Bowl, and Penn State will end up being #1.
All right. Thank you, Marvin Cetron. Thank you, Tim Willard. Fred and I will be back with a couple of predictions in just a moment.
% of nation on flu alert. Early deadliest outbreak in 10 years. Severe flu season underway. What will you do? Get serious medicine. Doctors recommend Theraflu. Theraflu is hot liquid medicine. Strong therapy for flu symptoms. Hot liquid therapy that works fast. What will you do when you get the flu? Doctors recommend Theraflu. Strong therapy for flu symptoms.
Here's an important number for investors. Look closely, and you'll see one of the most powerful tools for investors ever invented. No, not this, or this, but this, the telephone. That's because with a touch-tone phone, you can get Dow Phone, the premier service from Dow Jones & Company that provides real-time quotes and breaking news. Use Dow Phone to hear quotes on stocks, options, commodities, and indexes.
Silco, 22.5, up 1.
Or the latest company news and market updates.
Stocks jumped at midday. Brentech has announced a higher...
Plus expert analysis, world economic
The
news,
Labor Department reported that...
and much, much more. Now you can sample Dow Phone free. Just pick up this other powerful tool and write down this number. Call now for a free, easy demonstration of Dow Phone. Dow Phone, instant business and financial knowledge at the touch of a button. So call 800-248-4369. That's 800-248-4369.
My role will not just be that of a moderator, but a participant. You really never know what you'll see or hear.
Put all the laws in the books, but who's going to back them up?
Because it's unrehearsed.
People come out of prison, repeat their crimes at an 80% level.
It's called real TV.
For a transcript, send $3 to Crossfire Transcripts, Journal Graphics Incorporated, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 303-831-9000.
Well, Fred, what I really want to know is, am I going to be able to get through the year 1992 without getting a food stain on this tie? That's what's really important to me.
Look, that won't be the worst thing that'll happen to you in 1992. I think some of your worst fears are going to get realized. George Bush will get reelected. A capital gains tax cut will pass. Reagan will suddenly, by historians, be regarded as having been a great president. And Pat will be back.
Well, that, 3 out of 4 I might object to. One, I'll be very grateful for Crossfire and for the country when Pat comes back. But as for the rest, I think I'm just going to sleep through this year. Will you wake me when it's over?
Don't snore.
For the last time, Mike Kinsley. Good night for Crossfire.
From the right, I'm Fred Barnes. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of Crossfire.
I predict that Prime News will be coming up in just a few minutes, and I predict that we're about to find out what's in the headlines.
Right on both counts, Michael. Japanese officials discuss what will and will not be on the table when President Bush arrives for talks. A 5-year-old boy is hospitalized. His grandmother is jailed after a very dangerous celebration. Also, some people find a chilling way to welcome the new year. Those stories and more next on Prime News.
Coming up, Prime News, followed by Larry King Live after a word from your local cable system here on CNN.
If you loved me half as much as I loved you,
his voice is loved around the world.
You wouldn't worry me.
The rich, warm sound of Roger Whittaker.
Once in a while he won't call.
Now, Heartland Music presents Roger Whittaker in his all-new collection, Sincerely Yours.
Oh, my papa, to me he was so wonderful. I can't stop loving you.
Roger's voice is more beautiful than ever in his all-new collection.
I remember the night and the Tennessee Waltz.
2 great albums.
Did you ever know that you're my hero?
All your favorite songs.
And everything I'd like to be. Hey, won't you play another somebody done somebody wrong song? Down the lane I
remember, Roger Whittaker's all-new collection is not in stores.
I'll be loving you.
Stay tuned to order.
Always.
To order, call toll-free 1-800-257-1257 to save all COD charges and pay only $12.98 for records or cassettes or $16.98 for compact disc, plus $3 shipping. Use your credit card or send check or money order to Roger Whittaker, P.O. Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia. Remember, to save all COD charges, send check or money order or use your credit card.
To our viewers around the world, peace on earth from CNN.
This is CNN's Prime News, taking the time to examine world events, issues, and newsmakers, with Bernard Shaw in Washington and Susan Rook in Atlanta.
Thanks for joining us. We began in the former Soviet Union, where already it is Thursday morning, and the people of Russia are awakening to a new and very different world. For decades, the communist state kept prices ludicrously low on everything from bread to gasoline to pots and pans. But like communism itself, those controls are now consigned to history, all part of Boris Yeltsin's plan to break with the past and point Russia toward a free market economy. In Moscow, Marina Mirabella with Russia's reaction to Yeltsin's shock therapy.
In Moscow, the new year began much as the old one ended. People in line waiting for a loaf of bread.
This is unbelievable. Standing in line on a holiday, it's crazy.
This is the last time these Muscovites will be able to buy bread at state-subsidized prices. Today, a loaf costs about 1 ruble, the equivalent of 1 cent. On Thursday, price controls will end in Russia. The cost of necessities will triple. Bread will cost the equivalent of 3 cents a loaf. That's a huge increase in a country where the average weekly wage is less than 100 rubles, about $1.
Things are already difficult. I don't agree with higher prices. They'll only make life worse.
Many Russians will have to buy less and watch what they eat. Meat and vegetables will be 5 times more expensive. Other goods could jump even higher. Salaries will not keep up. The higher prices are part of radical economic reforms intended to encourage production and move Russia to a free market system.
This is the only way for us. The state has no more money. It can't go on subsidizing prices.
We have to go along with this. I have 2 children, and I'm prepared to make sacrifices for their future.
Despite that optimism, many here are apprehensive about an uncertain future. President Boris Yeltsin has asked Russians not to panic in the face of severe reforms, but some are worried higher prices could provoke anger and lead to violence. The transition from a state-controlled economy to a free market system will be painful and will take many months. But the government here hopes that profit will serve as a powerful engine that drives the Russian system and makes it more efficient. Marina Mirabella, CNN, Moscow.
Australian farmers today turned the free trade tables on President Bush. They complained about what they call unfair U.S. farm subsidies, even as Mr. Bush prepares to deliver his own pitch for open markets in Japan. The president talked trade with Australian officials today. Mr. Bush says his trip to Australia and Asia is aimed at creating jobs back home. He again stressed his election year message of economic concern during a New Year's Day jog.
A New Year's resolution always for peace. Certainly this year with Americans hurting, our economy sluggish, for prosperity at home. I think of the people that don't have it so good back there. But I also am confident that they will. I believe that what we're going to be proposing, plus what this economy will do anyway, is going to be all right. But while people are hurting like that, I mean, my first resolution has to be for the well-being of the American people.
Japanese Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa met with top officials today to discuss President Bush's call for more open markets. Mr. Miyazawa is urging Japanese auto companies to help sell more U.S. cars in Japan. Japanese Broadcasting reports the Prime Minister is being told he may have to take drastic trade action on his own in response to U.S. demands. Mr. Bush visits Japan next week.
When the president does sit down with the prime minister, he will be flanked by the chairman of America's big 3 automakers. The Americans planning to demand concessions, but can the Japanese offer anything at the negotiating table that would help? From Detroit, CNN's Ed Garston on the Americans, the Japanese, and the anatomy of a changing marketplace.
Call it invasion of the market snatchers. The steady stream of Japanese-made cars arriving on U.S. shores has snatched a third of the market from the Detroit Big Three. So next week, the leaders of GM, Ford, and Chrysler will join President Bush in trying to convince the Japanese to reduce the number of cars they export to the United States, help give their struggling companies a fighting chance. But car buyers in the U.S. drive in varying lanes of thought on the issue.
It would upset me to have less to choose from. And considering what's going to be available, if there were no imported cars, I'd be very upset.
I think we need some restrictions until they let us let our cars into their country.
I don't think it's going to have a meaningful impact.
Neither does Auto Week publisher Leon Mandel.
Japanese reduction in exports, I believe, will matter not a whit. The Japanese already have agreed to limit the number of cars that they ship from Japan to the U.S. They don't ship as many cars as they're allowed to ship. They don't need to because they manufacture enough cars in the United States.
They're called transplants. Well, for example, the Japanese Honda Accord is actually made in Marysville, Ohio. Indeed, Japanese automakers Nissan and Toyota are also U.S. automakers, operating transplant operations in the U.S. If imports are cut, the transplants could simply step up production, or the Japanese could build more plants on U.S. soil. The fact is, since the mid-1980s, the Japanese have actually decreased the number of cars and trucks they've exported to the U.S. by more than 1 million. But at least one expert says where the cars are made isn't so much the issue anymore, but where the parts are made that go into them.
A structural change has to take place in the way the manufacturer-supplier relationship works in this country before a lot of that imbalance is redressed.
Which all means it doesn't seem to matter. If the invasion of the market snatchers is slowed, they've already penetrated U.S. shores to the point where they'll not only survive, but multiply as well. Ed Garston, CNN, Detroit.
Coming up on Prime News, swollen rivers continue threatening flood-weary Texans. Peace plans lead to celebrations among Salvadorans, and they were strutting in Philadelphia as Americans coast to coast paraded in 1992.
Morning breath.
As soon as I have my coffee, it's all gone.
Whether you admit it or not, it's a problem.
Okay, I have morning breath, but it doesn't bother anyone.
Don't be so sure.
Mine's not so bad.